Okay, for this one, I'm just going to model this kind of simple high poly cube. Um, so starting out just with a basic cube, make it a 6 by 6 on the edge loops. Then what we're going to do is delete 3/4 of it because it's a symmetrical object. And all we need to do is get one corner correct, then we can mirror the geometry over to get the rest of the corners. Go ahead and give ourselves a bevel, 4 segments, bevel it all the way open, 1, kind of line everything up, and then using the multi-cut tool, what we're going to do is create a new edge loop right down through this corner so that we can create that rounded rectangle look on the faces. So need to do this 3 times over. I'm using the snapping with the multi-cut tool. It's kind of optional. In the end, we're going to pull this a little closer than the 90% anyway, but you know, just to kind of keep your line straight using the snapping, I highly recommend it. We're just going to divide this just to kind of keep the geometry nice and quadded. We'll end up changing this a little later, keeping it in order. Alright. There's not necessarily a way to snap this, but what you're wanting to do is just pull these vertices together and pull them sort of to the middle of the cube, but not quite the middle of the cube, or to the middle of this face. And just pull the start of the bevel edge in and pull the little divider out. Okay, that's what we're basically doing. We're just kind of changing the geometry a little bit. And what this is doing is this is actually creating kind of a beveled fence line for the flat part of our geometry versus the curve that's going on the curve of the geometry. So if you look at the high poly, you can see that there's this like clear shading line on each side, and that's what we're trying to create by adding this little double edge here. Okay, we're trying to create a situation where the edges will only be flexed in the one direction, and so it'll come out a lot evener. So here I'm just going to pull those a little tighter, and the tighter that you get these edges here, the more crisp and pronounced that transitional line will be. So just kind of tightening some stuff up. All right. So now where I pulled those in, what I've ended up doing is I've kind of warped this geometry a little bit. And so all I'm wanting to do now is just kind of straighten up these edges here where they're kind of warped, and just kind of to create a little more of a straight edge. So just adjusting the arc. And what this is going to do is it's going to create, it's going to help. I don't know if spherize is the proper term, but it's going to create more of a round shape on that corner instead of a corner shape on that corner, which is really what we're going for. We're not wanting this to be a pointed corner, and this needs to be more of a rounded corner shape. So you can see our angles are looking real nice. So now I'm just going to take a selection of the corner. And we're going to kind of flatten this thing out. So I need to go to the scale tool, change the axis orientation from world or object down to component. Right here, component. And what you'll notice is that the x-axis, the red axis, is pointing perpendicular out of the corner, which is what we want, so that we can smash this corner shape down. And as you see, as we bring it down, to flatten it, to make it more round, it's also protruding at the top and the bottom, so it's going to push out those edges. So what we have to do in order to counteract that is to move it in closer to the object and also scale it down some. So then when it smooths, we have a nice smooth transition. Instead of it kind of being bulbous, it's now going to just be a round shape flush with the rest of the geometry. So just keep, that might have to tweak on that a little bit in order to create that round shape. All right, just going to go ahead and assign the shader. Anyfong blend shader with the right settings so that you get that nice highlight will work just fine. This looks pretty good. So what we'll need to do next is just mirror the geometry. Go to Mesh, Mirror Geometry, and I love this little pop-up menu. You can just fiddle around with it till you get the option that you're looking for. No more applying and undoing. So let's do the Y direction, and then last but not least, the Z direction. Oop. Other way. There we go. Okay. So with merge enabled, everything's going to merge together, work out pretty well. So next, all we need to do now is add our dots. So in order to create the dots, what I ended up doing was just taking a standard spherized cube. So take the cube, go to Mesh, Smooth. One division's all we need, right? It's going to give us a nice 8-sided sphere. Delete the top, and then we'll end up, in the end, we'll need to flip those normals because we need the inside of it, not the outside. And then if you notice, each one of these sides has a 4x4 grid now. Okay, these 12 squares is going to be a nice grid layout. So I want to go to Mesh and Extract. Edit Mesh Extract in order to extract out that top frame. And what that's going to do is it allows us to take the centers out of the cube, so we can hold on to the edges that we have, and now we can work on attaching the proper sides. So using Vertex Snap, I want to scale this sphere down so that it fits inside of our grid. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the top, and just as a shortcut, click on the geometry, head to line toolkit, and add a division to it. This is just going to save us a habit of adding a bunch of edge loops. So we're just going to double that, give us a twice resolution grid to work for. And I want to make that sphere now slightly smaller than a half. This will allow us to add an edge loop around the sphere just to help blend things in a little nicer. So go ahead and delete these edges. Combine the two objects. Oh, need to reverse those normals. So right now it's really hard to tell with my shading, but if I turn backface culling on, you can see the outside, not the inside, is what we're seeing. So we need to go ahead and reverse those. Do Mesh Combine. And now I'm going to bridge all this together. So try to double click both of them, hit bridge. Oop, that was bevel. Let's try bridge. Okay, yeah, that made a mess. So let's kind of do it the slightly slower way. One edge to one edge and bevel. And then the whole loop and bevel. That didn't give me any edge loops. Let's undo it one more time. Let's deselect these two edges here and try bevel bridge again. So what we now have is the total loop there. So now we have a flat surface, an edge loop around the circle and sphere, and then the sphere itself. Okay, nice clean geometry. And if we add the shader back to it, You'll see that everything's all fused, no missing border edges, and we have a dimple. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and delete all this extra geometry, because all we need is what'll fill in one of those square spaces. And I can modify that pivot. In this case, I'm going to actually bring this down. Make another copy of that. Always keep a spare copy of these different objects that we're making, just so that it'll be easier to use. So, as a matter of fact, here I forgot to make another copy, so I'm using my original. So go ahead and, instead of placing it in the center like this, duplicate it before you place it. So this will be our one dimpled side. So go ahead and, in order to make this merge, remember the geometry, the number of sides and the number of vertices needs to add up. So what you do is delete every other edge loop, get rid of those vertices, and now when I do the mesh combine, I have an even number of sides, and once I select the vertices and merge them together, miss the middle ones. Yeah, double checking it with fine border edges. So let's select all these, select the side here, select the bottom. Alright, and then merge it. And now that my bold lines are gone, everything should be all nice and connected. Now I need to fence out these edges where I deleted those edge loops. I could have target welded them or deleted them. Either way, it's going to end up with this kind of cross pattern. And then just for a little extra blending, I can scale out those kind of square ones to make more of a rounded shape. With some of the multi-dimpled ones, say with 5 dimples and 6 dimples, you might not be able to do that as well. But now we have another blank canvas to start from. Duplicate another one over. I'll just go ahead and get rid of that. Alright, so now if I was to make a quad panel, what I need to do is just set my marker to the middle, duplicate it around, attach the two, and merge these sides. Now go back, move the pivot again, duplicate it, rotate it around, merge the two, there's a pattern here. Using the geometry that you need, the shapes that you need, cutting them, changing them, realigning the pivot point, merging them all back together again. A lot of these designs will be symmetrical, so create what you need and duplicate it around and save yourself a little bit of work. So that would be the arrangement for the 2 dimple. That'll make a 5. That'll make a 3. So we can just keep arranging, the objects, and because it's on such a grid and it has such a nice grid layout, all we'll need to do is again snap delete the faces you don't need, merge them together, and everything should line up the way we want it to. Just gonna get my sides in order here. Alright, so now back to our cube. The easiest way to put this thing together, once you've finished all your sides, is just to delete all the flat centers so that we're kind of left with an empty cage. And then simply change your pivot point, move it into place, snap it into place, and then we'll merge the vertices together. Now, one thing I would recommend is going into your top view or side view to select these vertices, because some of our corners have some really fine areas where we created a situation where the vertices are very close together. So if you end up selecting those corner vertices, it's very easy to have a threshold that's going to cause them to collapse. So in this case, I still had some trouble with mine wanting to merge. So what I ended up having to do that I found really useful was hold down the tab key and just sort of paint over a few of the vertices at a time. And just kind of hold tab, paint down on it, and then merge them together that way, and that seemed to combine. For some reason mine wanted to be very sticky. So now that should have cleaned up all my edges, have a nice edge flow. Everything's looking good on this top piece. So next, let's finish this dimple off. So what we need to do is just go ahead and select the edge loop, bevel that. I think I use a fraction of 0.1 and 2 segments, just enough to kind of hold that shape there. Go in and select the interfaces, grow that selection, and assign the white material to it. And what that'll do is add the colorization. So that's one side. All you have to do is to complete the dice is just continue to snap, move, rotate all your sides in together, and you'll have a completed dice.